I'm going to go ahead and start recording here in OBS, and we can sync anytime.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
That wasn't anywhere close.
No, it wasn't, but I can still line it up. It'll be fine. When it comes to like doing recordings and trying to sync them up, it's always a nightmare. Like it'll just never be good.
Well, the good thing is I'm going to send you the audio and the video. Yeah. So it'll be pretty obvious where if I just sent you the audio, then it'd be a little squirrely, but you can actually see where everything.
It's not ever too big of a deal, but I know for some people, like lining up audio, especially when I first started trying to line up audio, like with video, it's not the easiest thing. Like you can trick yourself and think that you've got it lined up, and then you go like 5 minutes later in the video and you're like, ooh, that's bad.
No, it's really crazy. Once you try to like do 2 cameras or 3 cameras and then try to get all the audio to sync. And it's like, no, you're not going to do that.
No, never.
It's not going to work. I don't care how often you clap. It's just not going to work.
All right.
Well, not to mention, even if it did work, Kdenlive is going to screw it up when it starts rendering.
I love that we all love Kdenlive, but
it's so great.
There's no one really white knighting for Kdenlive where they're like won't talk about the issues of everyone will openly talk. Kdenlive is not perfect.
I just expect every update to break something.
Yeah.
It'll always fix the things I complained about last release, but then it'll break something new. So it keeps you guessing.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you can always use Kdenlive. Like Kdenlive, to me, I don't ever have a day where I'm like, oh, I can't get work done because Kdenlive won't work. It's just, there might be something new I have to deal with, but it's all right.
I can relate.
Well, before we go ahead and talk too much, I guess I'll go ahead and say hello to everyone and welcome to the Unix Crew. This is a series I'm doing on my channel where I invite everyone in the Unix space on YouTube and abroad to just talk casually about whatever we're interested in. And I'm sure we've got some interesting things to talk about today. So I wanted to also like kind of highlight your GTK stuff that you've been working in.
No, I've been working on a lot of stuff. Since that video I made, I've been doing a lot more with GTK. It's a deep rabbit hole that.
Yeah, I've never dived into that. And are you still trying to combine GTK and Haskell and work there?
Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Okay, because I know you had talked about Python, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I could go that route too. You could do it in any language. All of them have GTK bindings, and it's for the most part all the same. Like a lot of what I've been doing with Haskell, because there's not very many Haskell examples out there. I'll go find people writing their GTK apps in a C or JavaScript or whatever the hell they're writing these things in. And, for the most part, I can figure out how to do it in Haskell because the names of the bindings in all the languages typically is the same. It's just formatted a little differently.
Yeah.
But the fact that the bindings are all named the same, it gives me a clue what to go look for in the documentation for Haskell when I see it in, C or Python or C++ or whatever.
That's awesome because I was expecting that trying to do a GTK app in Haskell would be difficult just because there's probably not many
it is. I'm not going to say it's easy. Or it's not easy. Like if you don't know anything about either Haskell or GTK, which is the case with me. I know a little Haskell, but I knew nothing about GTK. Yeah, you're not just going to all of a sudden one day figure all this stuff out. There's so much with GTK, or it's learning what all the various containers and buttons and widgets and, because there's like a million things with the GTK toolkit. And then once you kind of put it all together in whatever layout, you got to make all those sliders and buttons and things do something. And that's where the language you actually glued it all together with, that's where that comes into play. Because now you're using Haskell or Python or Rust or whatever you're working in. Now you got to make that button do something with that language.
Yeah. To me, like I think GTK is one of those things where I've never gotten into it, but it's something that I definitely need to. Like it's GTK is something where you can take it and
I'm gonna send you a link in the Jitsi chat. I can. No, that's a little bit of what I was working on this afternoon before some of the screens of some of this thing where I don't know if you can actually see that.
Oh, I can. Wow,
so some of that stuff was tricky. For example, I've got the color scheme thing where when I choose a color scheme, it actually gives me a preview because I included images to show. So when you change from a color scheme, it'll like give me a preview of the color scheme. And of course, when you click the button, it actually changes to that color scheme. It actually changes a bunch of config files on the system. And
that's so cool.
That made my brain hurt trying to figure that out. Right? The auto start thing, you can see the little check boxes. That's all the files that are currently listed in config auto start. When I click on that toggles it for me to remove them, or I can reverse it. It doesn't matter. But that was scary too.
See, this sounds like so much of a hassle, but I genuinely don't.
It's so much more of a hassle than like basic scripting. Like if you're just doing something with a bash script or a Python script, hey, great. But actually trying to make a graphical application is much more because you got to actually think about a UI experience where if it's just a command line app, there is no UI experience. Yep. So you just eliminate all that from the equation. Actually, and that's nice. That's actually a simpler way to work, and is the way I prefer to work. But this was interesting to get into.
Have you learned a new respect for UI designers, just in trying to do this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean it's a lot of work. Most of it is actually more of getting the UI straight. Getting all the layouts and buttons and widgets more than what they actually do when you click them.
Yeah.
Because that part is essentially like writing a script, right?
Yeah. Have you had to go back and forth? I'm just now thinking about the way that I would try to tackle this, and I'm assuming that this is something that would happen to me many times. And I just want to see if it's happened to you, where you get new functionality working, but you get new functionality working, let's say the check marks, for checking something, but then you add more, but the formatting is just completely wrong, and now you have to tackle the formatting aspect of things and getting it to look properly, format right. Have you had that happen at all?
You're talking about like their placement on the windows moving and stuff like that? I haven't had that issue. One thing, the language I picked to write this stuff in too, Haskell being an immutable language, meaning once I define something, define a variable, define a function, it can never change.
No.
So I don't have any weird side effects where I do something later and it affects, the stuff I had already done, where you can't have that in things like Python, because Python will just, you can redefine functions all day long, and it makes bug tracking so much more difficult because you're like, why is this happening?
Yep.
Where Haskell won't let you do that.
Yeah. I think Python's one of those languages where it's probably a good thing that we don't always use Python, only because debugging Python is not the best. There are much better languages to have to debug.
And I will say, just looking at Python, I'm not a Python expert or anything, but just reading Python scripts a lot. It seems like a lot of really overly verbose code. There's too much there on the screen for what this function does. A function that's 12 lines long that in other languages could be 3 lines long.
Yep. I actually think me and TFL were talking about that not too long ago. There are some languages where just the compilers, verbosity is, it's why? Why do I need 16 lines for a program that had no warnings and no errors? What are you doing?
It's one of the things that I really appreciate. It's one of you think it's just the weirdest language ever when you first look at it, but Emacs Lisp. But then when you get rid of all that unnecessary punctuation, you just make everything a parentheses. It just makes sense. And everything's a list. Everything's a list, and all the punctuation is parentheses. You don't have to think about anything else, right?
I can't comment on eLisp. I have to get into it because everyone who uses and works with eLisp tells me it makes so much sense. But because I'm not familiar with it, I look at it and I go, I don't know, man.
Yeah. It's the same thing with Haskell. That everybody that's ever, like, if you've ever looked at a Haskell program like Xmonad or the source code for Pandoc, things like that, you look at the punctuation, and it's got some weird stuff in it that you've never seen in any other language. No. Mainly the dollar signs. What the hell are all those dollar signs? That is a easier way to write a parentheses.
Oh, okay.
Because if I do function, dollar sign, and then function and some arguments, that is essentially the beginning parentheses, the dollar sign, and then at the end of the line, tack one more on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So nesting parentheses, not a thing in Haskell. You just chain dollar signs together, function, dollar sign, And it makes sense. It makes total sense. It's so much easier to read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, once somebody tells you about it, but until somebody tells you about it, you're like, what the hell's all the dollar signs?
Well, that's the thing with Haskell. Like, I don't know. Like when I can't remember when it was that I went back and checked out Xmonad, but like I can't remember if it was because you told me I should probably go ahead and do it, or if like I was talking with you and then people were like, yeah, you should definitely go and do Xmonad. But I wanted to stay away from it because I just didn't have a use for Haskell. Like I don't have another program on my system that needs Haskell.
No, you have to have Pandoc on your system, and you have to have shell check. Like those are two programs if you just have to have. Like there's no excuse not to have those two programs.
Hold on. Pandoc's written in Haskell?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It almost certainly is the most popular Haskell program on the planet. Like Pandoc's like universal, cross-platform, Windows, Mac, Linux, and pretty much anybody that does anything converting doc formats uses Pandoc. And it's a dependency for so many things.
I feel so dumb. Like so dumb because I've been like, I don't have anything on my system that uses Haskell. Oh. Now I'm finding out, oh yeah, just that wee little program that's fantastic. Oh yeah, that's a Haskell program. Everyone uses Pandoc too.
Yeah,
like
you have to.
Yep. I don't know if it was. I think it was you that popped into Scott's stream and we started talking about Pandoc for him and because Scott or Art Center.
He wanted to convert HTML to Markdown. It's like, oh, just use Pandoc.
Yep.
I didn't realize he was on Windows, but thankfully Pandoc works on Windows.
Yeah. But well, I mean, that's the thing, like with Obsidian, which is it's funny because he's talking about coming over to OpenBSD, and I'm like, Obsidian. As far as I know, it's a proprietary Electron app. Like it's
and proprietary programs are not going to support BSD in any way. Like that's not happening ever.
I mean, it's a miracle that it's on Linux.
Yeah.
Because I mean, no one's really that is one thing that I will say about Linux that's very interesting is we have a lot of proprietary apps now, like a lot that aren't just like community supported, like they're supported like officially, which is awesome for the Linux.
Well, something like Obsidian, I don't know too much about it, but I mean, I could see the use case for like developers, like and of course, so many developers use Linux. It makes sense that a lot of the people that would have used Obsidian, it's like, hey man, you got to make a Linux port of this. It can't just be Windows. Yeah,
that does make sense. I mean, it's just it's nice to be in this space now where it's like companies are like, everybody's asking us for us to like make a Linux port. Like that's a good place to be at.
But if you're Adobe, you just ignore it all, no matter how many tens of thousands of people,
Well, if you've ever used Premiere in the past, which I know you haven't, but if you've used Premiere in the past like year or so, like Premiere is so unbelievably buggy compared to every other video. Like even Kdenlive and Premiere, I would say are like on par with how likely they are to crash, which for a multiple $1,000 like program, if you use Premiere for like a year, like it costs a lot of money. That's kind of unacceptable. So trying to port that buggy mess over to
I'm not going to argue which proprietary video editor is best, but even on Windows and Mac these days, it seems like everybody's using DaVinci Resolve. They're not fooling with Adobe anymore, probably because of the pay model.
No.
Like, yeah,
Well, and it's still buggy. If you're going to pay that much
Yeah.
for a product,
you want a better product.
exactly. And
Yeah.
if there are free options, especially with Kdenlive, like now I know plenty of people who are like professional video editors, but in most cases can get away with Kdenlive, so they just do because it's a fine video editor. As long as you don't need to do real complex edits, it's fine. You can even do really nice edit. Like you can do some semi-complex edits with Kdenlive easily. So
Yeah, you can do most everything you want to do in Kdenlive. The only problem is you'll get used to a certain workflow, and then they'll break it in the next release. That's the only issue is things change.
yeah, which I mean, I think that's going to be an issue everywhere you go in software.
Yeah, but in free software, it's a thing you deal with all the time. For proprietary software, they typically respect backwards compatibility a lot more. Where free and open source software, they don't care.
Yeah, which is
one version to the next, we're gonna break everything.
Yeah, it's odd that you like. I mean, you would expect community, like more community-driven things to like respect the older community, but then they just don't, and it's like, why? But I mean, it's just something like in soft, like because I think Matt was talking about this not too long ago. He has like a whole bunch of his audio files like edited in the newer version of Audacity, and so he has to use the newer, like, you know, proprietary pimped out Audacity.
Yeah. Same thing with Kdenlive. If you save Kdenlive projects from one version to the next, won't open in the new version.
Kdenlive, come on.
That's where you keep that app image of the older version around just in case. I've always got 2 or 3 different versions of Kdenlive around just in case.
The sad part for me is I only save Kdenlive projects for an extended period of time when they were like you know, a bigger project, like it took a lot more editing. Otherwise, as soon as I get the video out, I just nuke the project. Like it's gone.
Well, sometimes it's nice if you're doing like an effect or an animation, something short, and it's just a few seconds, you know, you're going to use in multiple videos. You save that project, and then you can import that project into another project, almost like you import a video or image or anything.
Yeah, but you also, for those small things, like those are, I didn't think about that. Those are projects that I save just because if you ever want to go back and update it, it's very easy. And those are the things that you're I mean, if you're using it in every video, yeah, you're probably gonna. Yeah,
you probably should convert that to something else. Like if it's a video, convert that to MP4 or something. You know, if it's a GIF, anything. Don't save it in that Kdenlive proprietary format. Well, I say it's proprietary. It's open source, but it's
yeah, it's proprietary to that version.
Yeah.
So, what else have you been up to other than GTK stuff lately?
Oh, I mean, just work, doing my videos. You know, I make videos practically every day, every other day. I'm always working on something. Here lately, some of the topics that were kind of popular was me promoting Odysee, which every year or so, I like to remind people that I have an Odysee channel.
Yeah.
I don't talk about it that often, but about once a year, I'd like to revisit that and remind people that, hey, you don't have to watch all of this stuff on YouTube. There is a free and open source platform, the Library Protocol. You can use the Library app. It even has a Android app, the Library app. And of course, Odysee is a web front end to Library, Odysee.com.
It's fantastic.
And
I do a terrible job of pimping it myself.
And one of those things, it was so raw and kind of just bad in the early days when I first signed up. You didn't have, users couldn't comment. And then when users finally could comment, there was no moderation at all. They didn't give the creator of the channel any moderation options, which means the entire platform there for a few months was completely overrun by spam. Because why wouldn't you set up spam bots? Nobody can delete anything.
Exactly.
Like literally nobody can delete anything. It's like, hey, and I complained forever. It's like, if you want real creators here, which I'm assuming you do, because the Odysee guys were really trying to get people, you know, bigger channels. I was like, you got to let me delete the spam.
Yeah.
I've got to be in control of the comments on my videos.
Yeah.
I get that you guys want to allow everybody to post anything they want. That's fine. Let people, I don't, whether I agree with it or not, let them post their own videos about whatever. But the comments on my videos need to be, I need to be in control of that.
Oh, yeah. Because,
spam
was the biggest problem, but
it was crazy. It's like 2/3 of the comments were spam bots.
Yeah. But when you couldn't moderate your own chat, I mean, people could go unhinged in your comments.
Oh, and they still do.
Oh, yeah.
But now you can do something about it.
Exactly. Like when you couldn't do anything about it, like the unhinged people, like you'd have 13 different comments. Most of them had like questionable race comments where you're like, oh, God.
And just say mean things about the creator of the video, Like, hey, DT, go jump and rotate. Well, on YouTube, I could delete that comment, but on Odysee, there for a while,
yeah, it just had to stay there. It's just part of your channel.
Yeah.
But they have gotten a lot better. Like they're a lot better. They need to work on their reliability, but that's hard to like hit them on. I mean, they don't have YouTube's power and money behind them, so it's hard to have a very reliable and capable service like YouTube.
Yeah, for the most part, though, it's not too bad as far as the comments. It's not overrun with spam. It's not overrun with just crazy negative stuff. Because I think part of it is it just hasn't got to the point where it's as big as YouTube. Once it's as big as YouTube, yeah, we'll have a lot more crazy people there. Right now, it's just...
Well, there's also, when it comes to Odysee, there's also the fact that it's a free speech driven platform. So a lot of the people that come over to YouTube don't end up like bringing the same mentality that they have on you. Like on YouTube, the idea is let's make this a safe space for people. Odysee is not a safe space. It's a place to say what you really want to say.
Well, Odysee, it's not the library protocol. Odysee, the website, does have to respect laws, such as DMCA. So a lot of people think they can just go to Odysee and post anything. No. Don't do that. Odysee is not incentivized because they don't run an ad network. So Odysee doesn't care whether you post something that they agree with or don't agree with personally. It doesn't matter to them. It doesn't affect their money the way it affects Google's money. That's why Google is so aggressive. It actually affects their advertisers. Advertisers don't want to be on channels that post crazy things that cost YouTube potentially billions of dollars. Odysee doesn't have that problem. So you can post anything you want. But if somebody complains that, you broke some law, like DMCA takedowns, hey, they're going to take you down.
Yep.
They've got no choice. They're legally required to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, I mean, freedom of speech is freedom of speech.
But you still have to obey laws.
Exactly.
There's people on the internet that just think they can do anything, and it's or every place is a public space. No.
No.
Your freedom of speech is, hey, you can say whatever you want in public. Odysee.com is not a public space. Like, people don't understand. Like, my website is not a public space. Like, people walking around Walmart, I can say whatever I want, do whatever. No, like, people do that in stores too. They think that's public. They can wear whatever. They can, just say whatever. And then when they get put out, you can't do that. This is public. No, actually, it's not.
No, you're inside Walmart, man. Somebody owns that.
You'd be surprised how many people are just really confused about like just basic stuff.
Yeah.
Like the First Amendment, right? Your freedom of speech and privacy and things like that. They think it extends to places it doesn't. And in many cases, they don't think it extends to the places where it really does. Yeah. Like, they've got it all twisted.
Well, it kind of makes you worry about like just the school system. It's like, dude.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. Is these people haven't been educated at all in many cases. Yeah.
Well, I mean, without getting super deep into that topic, like it's just, it's sad because it's just like, oh man, like it's weird that laws are not nearly as well understood as you would think they are. Like, given that they kind of, govern everything about how you interact, where you live, the amount of people that are completely ignorant to the way laws work is just, it's mind-blowing. It kind of gives credence to that old theory that like most people break like 2 to 3 laws a day. Like,
yeah, probably.
Like when you don't understand most of the laws, you probably do break 2 or 3 a day.
Well, when you don't understand, basic rights, like our constitutional rights here in the U.S., well, then the government can violate them. That's fine. Most people don't know about them anyway. Right? You didn't know you had them anyway. We'll just take them away.
Well, so when it comes to laws and people taking them away, I do have an interesting question for you. Do you think that here before too long, because I know I was reading, I think it was the night before last, some people were talking about GPL and it not being tested in court. Has the GPL really never been tested in court at all?
No, there have been companies that have been sued because of violating the GPL.
See, that's what I thought. I read a whole thread of people talking about it.
There's been big companies sued. The most obvious one is VMware was sued for violating the GPL. They licensed some stuff under the GPL, but they weren't abiding by the license. Probably not making source code available. That's typically the main sticking point that's obvious to everybody, is when you license something under the GPL. If I can't go find the source code in a convenient way, then technically you've violated. Yeah.
I mean, not even technically, you've violated the law.
I mean, but some people, source code is there. You got to jump through hoops. The license is kind of vague. The license says it's got to be available in an easily accessible way. But what does that mean?
Exactly. Well, actually, there's a tech lady that I watched out of, I think it's out of China. I think it was out of China. And there was she tested because there was some company that was doing, FOSS stuff. And, according to the license, she has to be able to easily find it. So she did a whole bunch of back and forth with the company. And for her to easily get it, she had to go to their headquarters in China and then request it there. And nobody there knew how to give it to her. So she had to go through 3 departments and stuff. And finally,
you have to think about the days before the internet too. It's like in the early days of the GNU project, the GPL. I mean, this is way before the World Wide Web was a thing for most people were on the internet. So we think easily accessible. I need to go find it on a Git repository somewhere. Well, back in the day, it meant I needed it on a CD or a tape or, some kind of floppies.
And that's just, it's crazy.
And technically that would still be a valid way to distribute your source code, is if people requested it, that you would provide it on physical media. Now, most people are not going to do that. That's a hassle now. It's the internet, right? You're just going to put it up.
Well, I mean, it's crazy. If we didn't have the internet, it's just crazy that we'd still be getting USB drives and CDs. I kind of miss the days where people would share CDs, and I'm not talking about just music CDs, just CDs of computer stuff, games and data and, pictures and videos, whatever you could put on a CD or a floppy or whatever you happen to be. Yeah.
Because that was a much more, I think it's much more community oriented, computer users in general, because you didn't have the internet to share stuff, right?
Yeah.
I had something and you had something that I wanted. Hey, I'll trade you. I'll give you this.
The sad part is now with the internet, you don't even do that with flash drives anymore.
No.
And then sometimes you just won't even share things. You just won't even, because you're like, I can't, it's too big for me to send over the internet. It's
I remember years ago, we had CD sharing programs for Linux. That was one of the things, back in the day, Ubuntu especially pushed, if you burned a CD of Ubuntu and installed it, hey, then pass it on to somebody else. They'd set up mailing programs where people could, give out their address, and you just send your CD to them. And then once they've installed it, they'd send the CD on to somebody else.
Yeah. Man, I wish we could start that up just for a nostalgia thing. But the problem with that is in this day and age, giving out Yeah, giving out your home address is just an insane idea.
Nobody has an optical drive either. They're going to open that CD, and what am I going to do with this?
I didn't even think about that.
Where does this go?
I love how that didn't even cross my mind.
Oh, it's a coaster. Let me put my coffee cup on it.
Poor CDs, man.
Yeah.
Like, and the sad part is like for long-term storage, like, or long-term data storage, like CDs are a really good option as long as you keep them stored nice. Like,
Now, certain brands, certain types, the really cheap ones, a few years.
yeah, well, those ones are.
But they make archival ones with, the special coating on them that should be a little more resistant to the elements.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing with flash drives. You cheap out and get a super cheap flash drive.
Yeah, flash memory doesn't last that long. Like, it's just the way it's built. It eventually loses electrons, so you can't have flash memory, solid state drives, things like that. You can put them in a closet. They'll probably last a few years, maybe even a decade or two, but probably not.
Yeah,
you get 2 decades of storage out of them.
No,
like you won the lottery on that.
most like people that I hear talking about it, the lifetime of an average SSD is about a decade.
Yeah,
and that's again assuming you've kept it well.
That's assuming you wrote to it one time, put it in a closet.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, with continuous usage, about 5 years is.
No, yeah, they don't last that long.
Yeah, it's just it's weird that like SSDs are marketed as this kind of thing that. A lot of the times the marketing is good because it's just based off of speed. Like that is a good marketing avenue. The marketing avenue of this is going to save your storage. It's going to last way longer than a hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, I'm sorry. No.
Well, the hard drive, again, it depends. Like if you're just doing archiving, writing to something and putting it away, the hard drive is a better choice in that aspect. But if you're writing to something all the time, then the hard drive's still got the problem of it's actually got moving mechanical parts,
yep.
Which obviously, I mean, just the laws of nature, moving parts wear out. It's just.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also, so speaking of hard drives and moving parts, do you have a really large hard drive?
I don't have anything currently that's bigger than a gig. Well, I take that back. I have an external SSD that's 2 gigs. I have a bunch of drives, but I don't have anything.
Are you saying 2 terabytes?
I mean, 2 terabytes.
Yeah, I was like,
two.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm having flashbacks to the 90s again.
Yeah. Right. I was concerned there because when you doubled down the second time, you said, "No, wait, I've got an external drive." That's
well, you knew what it actually would be kind of cool to have one of those really tiny drives just to see if you can make it happen.
I have a old IDE. I think it's like a 5 or 10 gig hard drive. And I need to throw that in, like just to play with it, because I think
you could install most Linux distros on 5 gigs. You couldn't install anything else after that, but you could probably get the operating system installed.
Well, the funny thing is like, what am I going to hook this IDE drive to? Like,
it better not be a systemd distribution either if you're going to get it on 5 gigs. Had to take a shot there.
Of course. I mean, it wouldn't be a talk with you if we didn't take one shot, like just one pop shot at systemd.
Well, I actually use systemd and like systemd, but I
you
did
still
that
have to give it crap.
I did that for the haters out there. There's so many of them that always get annoyed. DD, when you gonna hate on systemd? I never see you hate on systemd. Why don't you?
Well,
like, dude, there's nothing to hate on.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's a
get over
of programs. Like if you don't use them all, that's fine. Like the crazy part to me is the people that will screech about systemd and like the fact that it's super bloated because it's got stuff in it that they don't use. I'm like, I guarantee you I could find one core util that you don't use. I guarantee you I could find one core util that you just don't make any use of. You do not scream about the GNU core utils. Like,
right.
It's the same thing. Like it's.
Well, I would say most people don't use any of the core utils that use Linux. I mean, let's be for real.
Yeah.
I mean, most people that are installing your standard desktop distributions, they're not dropping to a terminal. They're not even using things like CD and LS. No. They're definitely not venturing into grips at all. right?
Yeah. They probably have graphical programs that make use of them in the background, but that doesn't matter to them.
That's another thing I try to get people when I talk about those GNU core utils and scripting and things like, all your graphical programs are doing the same stuff we're typing in the terminal. You just didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When your graphical package manager pops up and says you need to update the system and you click OK, it's doing a Pacman SYU.
Yeah,
that's why you could.
That's why I love the GUIs where when it starts doing something, you have that drop down and you just get the terminal output of what it's running in the background. Like I love
it's that. Like you could have just saved yourself from navigating through the menu, finding that GUI app, and then opening it, and then clicking a tab or two to get, and then you got the button, do the confirmation. I'd already been done at the terminal.
Yeah. Well, and the ironic part too is there's plenty of Ubuntu, either base Ubuntu or Ubuntu spinoffs, that if you update for the first time through the terminal, like not only will it be faster, but it typically is more reliable. Like the GUI will sometimes just act weird and just like it'll finish, but it won't tell you that it's finished. So like the page that you're sitting on, like it'll show that it's like 98, 99% done for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then you click off and click back on it and it's refreshed and it's finished, the update's done, but it just didn't tell you.
I've heard of people telling me that before. I can't confirm or deny that because I never used the graphical package managers ever. I've just never, even in the early days, I just always did it at the terminal. But I have heard people tell me that they prefer updating their system either at the terminal or in even crazier cases, they drop to a TTY. They just get out of the X server altogether. I just said, because I've had bad things happen when I was, in a desktop environment updating my system. I don't know if any of that matters or not. It probably would if you were actually updating Xorg or the desktop environment or things like that. It's never been an issue with me that I know of.
I've never had that issue. Like I've never had it like X have a problem updating. But I'm sure if you've used Linux for long enough.
Oh, I've had issues with X updating on Gentoo. Like I've had like, hey, Xorg just got updated. Reboot. No, black screen. Like, thank you. Kernel panic. Like
Gentoo, you're the best. I don't.
And you go to the Gentoo website, everybody's complaining, and you're like, what the hell why did I even install this? Let me go back to Arch. That's every time I do anything with Gentoo or Gentoo based distributions, it's usually for a week or two. Oh, this isn't too bad. And then, oh yeah, I remember why I never stick with this.
Yep. Well, that's what cracks me up about Gentoo is like Gentoo is one of those systems that you use and you play around with and you're like, okay, like, I don't know. I feel like for most people who try out Gentoo, you're like, this is neat.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use it. No. Like, no. I feel like that's
definitely not.
No. The people who use Gentoo and stick to it, I feel like are the more interesting folks. Like you're really
well, I'm not one of those kinds of people that I purposely use something I know is limiting. Because I like the people that use Gentoo, a lot of them will tell me, hey, you can use Gentoo. I got like 2,000 and something packages installed on my Arco Linux because I got so much window manager, so many programs installed. I'm not going to do that on Gentoo. These people that are using Gentoo, they are installing a bare bones Xorg system with they're compiling DWM themselves. They're not even managing that with a merge, right? They're just like you've got nothing on your system. You've essentially set up a Gentoo server, and it's great. It never breaks. I'm not gonna. I can't do that. I've got to have more stuff than that.
I actually, now that you're saying that, I would love to find out how long it takes you to replicate your system, like as it currently stands, on Gentoo. That would take so unbelievably long.
Well, because I know how long a lot of it would take, I would probably cheat and implement a lot of app images. Because that's something I've done before on source-based distributions is, you know what? I'm not compiling a browser. I'm not compiling LibreOffice. I'm not compiling Kdenlive or anything like that. I'm going to get all of that through an app image. Just because I never have to worry about merging that on Gentoo or whatever source-based distribution.
Yeah. That's such a
That's
cheat.
that's
That's
assuming
such a cheat, though.
yeah, that's assuming app images work on Gentoo. They'll be fine, but on some distributions, I'm not sure if app images works on Nix. I know they don't work on Geeks, GNU Geeks.
Yeah. Well,
But GNU Geeks is weird because, I mean, it runs GNU Shepherd as it's a init system.
And I think that's what kind of causes a few issues, because app images do have to interact with the init system occasionally.
Yeah, the file systems also are a problem on Geeks and Nix because, they don't put anything in user bin. They've got their own store of applications that are... So, because the file system hierarchy is so different on Geeks and Nix, that messes things up. So, no snaps, no flat packs.
Yeah, that's a similar problem with, as far as I know, that's a similar problem that exists on OpenBSD with getting app images over. Is, as far as I know, we have Fuse ported over, so like it theoretically could work, but because the file system is different, But yeah, man, I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Man, I'm up for any discussion you want to have. I've had like 4 cups of coffee today since getting here this morning. I'm tanked up on caffeine. Like I said, I was putting in a little work. I wasn't sure when we were going to get together. So I was doing a lot with the GTK stuff I've been working on, reading a lot of Haskell documentation. I've just been staring at this screen for hours and hours and hours.
You had a totally different day than me. I slept in like crazy. I fell asleep last night at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I've been staying up like way too late. I fell asleep, slept for like 12 hours, woke up at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Freaked out. I told you I'd email you early this morning, or like later in the morning.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Well, I mean, I wasn't gonna get up at the break of dawn, but I got here, I don't know, about 9 or so this morning. But I have to make myself go to bed at a decent hour or two, because I'm one of those people. I'm constantly doing something.
Yep.
There's so much work to do throughout each day. And I'm constantly, I got to get this done, I got to get this done. And the next thing you know, it's 3, 4 a.m.
Yep. That's me.
And it's like, I'm one of those people, I really need like a 36-hour day. Like I can live this weird sleep cycle where I'm awake for a day and a half and sleep for a day and a half, but that's not the way every other human does it. They're doing this 24-hour thing, so I've got to do that.
It's terrible, man.
It's like now I have to conform just to be, just to feel like I'm part of humanity.
Yeah. It also, it's the worst. Like with today's, like today for me, like sleeping in, because you feel like so behind everyone else. You're like, oh my gosh, everyone else has been up working for so long. But in all reality, I mean, I was working while most people were sleeping, but still, like, I feel like I'm behind everyone. But
well, what do you think? You're going to get into the GTK stuff with Rust? Is that what you were thinking?
Really, in all honesty, with Rust, I'm more looking forward to doing there's a whole bunch of Rust libraries for game development, and I really want to try those out and see how they are. I think there's one that's gotten really big. I can't remember what it's called. The icon is like a dove. I can't remember what it's called, but that one it seems really interesting. There's quite a few of them now. There's like a handful of game libraries for Rust, and those seem really interesting. Yeah. And I'll probably be doing a Rust live stream tomorrow. I meant to do it today, but slept in, and I've got more stuff that I've got to take care of, so I'll have to wait.
Yeah. And one of the things I did the other day, I made a video just because I was scouring the internet, and I realized how spoiled so many Linux users act. And I mentioned you don't see this on lesser operating systems. And I say lesser operating systems because let's be real. Because of the Linux kernel being so massive, it supports so much stuff.
Yep.
And we've kind of gotten spoiled. Yep. So you got people asking, they want everything. Because you're already given so much, you got to have it. Yep. I was like, you know what? I've never seen a Haiku user act like this. They're not going, hey, man, I need multi-user support on this thing. I mentioned, I've never seen a NetBSD user acting like a spoiled brat demanding more from me. Like he didn't get much in the first place. He has no right to demand more. Exactly.
Well, I think also, too, what hurts Linux in that what hurts Linux in that aspect is it is a community-based project. So what the community asks for and needs, the developers try to make happen. And so that type of community attracts the type of people who they have no capability or idea of how to solve their issue or how they could implement a fix for their issue.
My problem is, in many cases, even if they did have an idea, they have no initiative to do it themselves anyway.
Yeah.
But they want somebody else to do it.
Yeah, they'll scream at someone else to do it. And it's crazy. Like that's one of the things that I will say I like about OpenBSD is it's not that environment at all. Like you can scream all you want for the OpenBSD.
They're not listening.
They're not listening. Like if they don't need it, they're not going to do it, but they are.
It's one of the advantages of proprietary software, because with Windows and Mac OS X, people can complain, but there is nobody at Windows or Apple
that cares.
That gives.
They just don't care.
Zero F's given, right?
Yeah, unless you start voting with your dollar, which, let's be honest, most people won't. They don't care.
Unless you're a major shareholder, not listening.
Yep. Your input means nothing. And there's something to be said for that. Like it's not what will please the majority of people. The majority of people are the type of people who can't fix their type, like the type of issues that they would scream at the developers of their OS to fix. They can't fix, which it pleases them to know that, hey, well, the people who make my OS, the people who develop it are interested in what I have to say. They're interested in what I need. There's definitely a market for that. But there's also just as much to be said for an environment where if you want that stuff fixed, if you want something implemented, if you want a new feature, you do it yourself. The developers will help you do it, but you have to do it yourself. Like that's it. There's merit for both of those. But Linux does attract by nature the people who just will scream and demand stuff because, well, people have done it in the past and get what they want.
I think we don't do a good enough job educating our users. Like that's part of the problem. Is many people don't feel like they've been taught enough to actually contribute in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Well,
where a lot of projects really need to focus on not just giving people something that's easy to use and they can use it. They need to also be using their applications as a platform to teach people how this platform actually works, how it was built, how you can build it, how you can contribute and help, Like that needs to be as big a part of the process as just, hey, this is a fantastic operating system, use it. That's great.
Yeah.
But we need to think about the future of the operating system as well, and we need to be training people.
Exactly. And the weird part is it seems like there's two groups at odds here because it seems like there's two big majorities of Linux. The group that wants to educate people on Linux. And then there's another group that wants to convince people that you don't have to learn anything. You'll never have to learn.
It's just Windows.
Exactly.
It's just Windows in a different form.
Yeah, just use it because it's better than Windows. Like,
yeah.
It's weird because those two groups, like I feel like they're the group that just wants everyone to use Linux and you don't have to learn anything. Like it's just a drop-in replacement for Windows.
Yeah.
You have to
I think I've seen a little bit of the history of this, and it has changed over the years. 10 years ago, that group that was trying to convince everyone that Linux was just like Windows, and we don't care about free and open source software or any of that. We don't care if you learn anything while you're here. This is just a drop-in replacement for Windows. That's all you need to know. That group was the one that was actually out in public. They were the ones writing all the articles about Linux. They were the ones making all the videos about Linux. You know why? Because that other group of people was mostly the developers. They ain't got time for all that. Yep. So they're letting this other group of people speak for them, but that other group of people was not giving the right message.
Yeah.
It's changed now. Yeah, and you can really see it. Especially on YouTube, when you look at video content, you got a lot more people trying to teach people about Linux the right way, rather than, hey, you don't need to know anything. It's just like Windows. Just install it.
Yeah.
No, stop.
It's really not. Like,
It's not.
and a lot of the times people will confuse the argument of like, like my grandmother and my mom both use Linux just fine. They'll take that argument of pretty much anybody can use it to mean that you don't need to know anything about it to use it, which is not the proper art. Like, that's not an argument. Like, because the people that already, my grandmother doesn't even know how to use Windows. Like, there's no, if I asked her to like change a wallpaper, I'm pretty sure I'd have to walk her through it. Like,
yeah, I mean, not everybody needs to be educated on these things, right? But
using that as an argument for,
it needs to be available for those who want it, though, is the thing.
Yeah.
And right now, I feel like it's not the case.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to know how to create your own Linux distribution, think about how much stuff you would have to go out and search for, because it's not in any easily accessible place anywhere on the internet. Like, it's like there's so much, how to make your own packages, whatever format you want to use Debian, how you create a Debian package, how you maintain a repository, how you eventually make an ISO.
No.
Well, use an installer. Are you going to use the Ncurses installer? Are you going to use the Calamares installer? Like, there's so much stuff, and you're not going to go find. In many cases, this stuff is hidden. This kind of information, where it should be like, here it is. Anybody can read it right up front. We'll even teach you how to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting though, because with that one, I think there's a reason why it's not so easily accessible on the ins and outs of making a Linux distro. Mainly because the people in the past where we did, do you remember OpenSUSE's like thing where you could make like your own custom Linux ISO like tool?
Yeah, the open build system.
Yeah.
From years ago. Yeah, they ditched that.
Exactly. Well, I think the thing is like when we were more focused on getting those tools out there, it made it to where people who weren't inexperienced enough to use Linux, but were definitely inexperienced enough to make a Linux distro, were making Linux distros. And the thing about like making a Linux distro is if you're going to make a Linux distro that you're going to give out to the public, it doesn't make sense to make one like you would make it for yourself. Like making a Linux distro for yourself is different.
But many people, that's exactly what they want to do.
Exactly. And like,
that's the problem.
Yeah.
Because people ask me about this all the time is, how do I make a Linux distro? And when they talk about that and I ask them more, they just want basically to clone their existing system, have an ISO, and just be able to reinstall. That's.
And for that, like, I don't know, like, for making your own completely reproducible system that is your own, like that should be readily available, like information. And so should making your own Linux distro for the public. Both of those.
Yeah, but even things like packaging for various distributions, think about especially the smaller distributions, how many of them really struggle getting package maintainers. Their repositories are very small. It's something their users complain about. Why aren't they going out of their way to explain to everybody on their website up front, or even in videos or whatever format they want to use, social media, they announce it to the world, we need more package maintainers. I'll even show you how to do it. You just show up at this time on a Zoom call or whatever it happens to be. I'll walk you through it.
Yeah.
They don't do that. Well,
the distros that you're talking about that have that problem in the first place, I think the same reason why they won't do that is the same reason why they're not having success in the first place.
They don't, in many cases, they need package maintainers, but at the same time, they don't want more package maintainers because, well, we're going to get a lot of people that don't know what the hell they're doing.
Well, teach them. Like,
well, maybe, but maybe they'll learn. One thing's for sure, they won't learn if they're never here.
Yeah.
Right? That's like
well, those are those distros where there's a lot of stuff that they could do to educate like new people that come to their distro, and they're not taking the initiative. Or they are taking the initiative in a, like, here's the craziest thing that I've ever heard. Someone was talking to me. I won't name the name of the distro, but there's one particular distro that they were telling me that I needed to use and check out and everything. And there was vital information that I needed that they told me was available easily on the mailing list. I'm sorry, but if there's critical information about a distro and it's not in the documentation on the website or the website itself, there's a problem. Like how that's a thing that I see a lot with not just Linux, but just projects in general, where they have important information on their Discord.
Yeah, that's weird, especially a mailing list, because nobody subscribes to mailing lists anymore. Nobody uses email anymore, practically. There's still distributions that maintain mailing lists just for legacy reasons, because there's a lot of neckbeards. But I don't know why the Slackware devs didn't tell you the information you needed. I don't know why they told you to go to their mailing list.
I like how you knew it was Slackware.
Oh, I knew immediately when you told me that. Yeah. Because you know why I know that? Because there's nothing on Slackware's website. There's like literally, you have to go to the mailing list because you're not going to go to they don't maintain a website. I mean, there's slackware.com. There's nothing there. Half the time, slackware.com doesn't even load because somebody forgot to pay the hosting bill.
Yep.
You know, it's like
it's crazy. Like, also, I got destroyed by some Slackware people for saying that I didn't like their design of the design of the website. I wasn't a fan of. Oh. My Lord.
There was a situation about 6-7 years ago. I remember their website went down for a while, like for weeks, because they slipped up, maybe didn't register the domain, let their hosting go. And there for a while, the dev, he was just like, well, nobody really uses the website anyway. I'm not in a hurry to get it back up. Anybody that wants the ISO can grab it with FTP or whatever other protocol. You don't really need to maintain anything on the web. It's like eventually the website came back, but it's like, well, that's Slackware. That's the way they do things. It's kind of like every now and then you see that one person that does something crazy, but then you're like, well, that person, he always acts like that. And Slackware is that guy. Yeah.
It's just crazy to me. Like I don't we live in a day and age where maintaining a website or focusing on documentation should be the thing that comes first. Like,
yeah. And to be honest, that's another real area where Linux distributions lack most of them, is maintaining a website. And I understand maintaining a website is a full-time job. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to also develop software, that's a full-time job. Yeah, you can't do both. Like, I get it.
No.
Like, I hate even looking at my websites. I don't even want to touch them because there's so much wasted time. I don't even want to, no. Don't want to even dive into that. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever, PHP and databases. Gross. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at it.
But if you are serving a operating system that you maybe don't expect, or maybe don't expect people to be using, but you are hosting it for other people to use.
I'm going to slackware.com. It only took 30 seconds for slackware.com to load, and it's seriously a plain text one-page website.
Yep.
And it took like 30 seconds to load. Like, what are they running this off of? A Raspberry Pi? I love it, though. It's like, well, you know what? I'm not even going to pay for like a $5 shared VPS or anything. I'm just going to run it off my home Raspberry Pi.
Well, it was funny because so Matt was installing Slackware, I believe, yesterday on his channel. He did a live stream where he installed Slackware, and the shenanigans that were going on in chat while he was installing Slackware were just the best.
You have to be careful if it's something you've never installed before, especially. Like, I see way too many of you guys, like if it's your first time installing Gen 2, if your first time installing Slackware, or if you, many people, I've seen a ton of people, first time installing Arch, I'm going to do it live. And then they get all of these people show up in chat.
You started saying Arch, and
yeah. When you're doing these streams, and if it's your first time installing any of these operating systems, you can't listen to chat because you're going to have 50 different people telling you 50 different things, and it's guaranteed to bomb.
Yep.
Like, I can tell you before you even start, if you have the chat open and you're listening to them, you are not going to install any of those operating systems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, guaranteed. So don't do it on a live stream is what I tell people, especially I tried to convince a lot of people. It's like, man, why are y'all installing Gentoo on a live stream? For one thing, don't listen to the chat. For another thing, the compile times take forever. You could cut out so much wasted dead air. More people would actually watch it. Also, are you compiling this thing on your physical machine in front of you, or you SSHing into a different machine? Because if you're only got one machine, you can't install Gentoo, do all that compilation, and then record, which takes a ton of CPU. One's gonna suffer for the other.
Yep.
It's like
poor Matt's stream installing Gentoo. That was
it's everybody. It's not just him. I literally everybody I've ever seen try to do a Gentoo live stream. It's a lot to think about. Like, you don't realize how much CPU the compilation sucks up until you start trying to do it, and then you realize I can't stream on YouTube and compile software at the same time. That just will not work. It's physically impossible, right?
You literally have to have at least a 16-thread computer to even make it possible. Yeah. Like,
you better be throttling the compilation on Gentoo. You better only give it otherwise it's going to suck it all up.
Yep. Yeah. Like, you have to make that make ops like down. You have to, which is it's weird that I did a live LFS install, and I will never understand. Like, I did that as pretty much just a throwaway. Like,
right.
I cannot believe I had plenty of people tune in and stick around for large portions of that install. I'll never understand it. Never.
A lot of people that show up for the live streams, though, they're just there for the live streams. Hopefully you get more people that watch it in the future, but probably not. A lot of the Arch installs, the Gentoo install that are live installs, people show up just for the fun, just for the giggles, just to see if you mess something up.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you don't mess anything up, they leave the live stream. Oh, there's no fun.
Exactly.
He entered the right command.
Yeah, he's actually installing it. What's going on? I mean, that was probably the most exciting, thrilling part about my LFS install. It's just getting to the end and being like, yeah, so it doesn't boot. Yay.
It's like I did that Gentoo install of mine. I pre-recorded it, but I did one maybe about 6 months ago, not too long ago. But I kept getting people asking me, hey man, when you going to do a video installing Gentoo? Like, I've already installed Gentoo on video at least twice before. It's been a while, but they're like, no, you got to do another one. It's like, okay, here's me installing Gentoo again. Like, they expect it to be some kind of weird thing that you can't get through. It's like, no, it's really easy.
Yeah, it's really not that bad. Like, I mean, even Matt got his Gentoo installed, like, with us giving him like 3 different directions and like pulling him in every different direction, it still worked. Like, it's really not
a lot of people. When I made that announcement about a month ago, I said, I'm going to look into GTK. I'm going to create a GTK app, my very first one. Don't know anything about GTK. People are like, well, you can't do that. It's like, well, I can read documentation. What do you mean I can't do that? Like, people are weird. Like, and it's weird that some people have that mentality that they think they can't do something. When the knowledge is out there, you could go find it. But some people, I guess, just, I don't know. It's weird to me because I'm one of those people. I know I can go read something and figure it out. That's never been a problem.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it in 2 different languages, Haskell and Python. I don't know any Python really. And then I really got people, no, that's never going to happen. Yeah, it's like, it's complete fail. And then I showed up a couple weeks later with that video. I mean, it wasn't much of a program, but I showed up with something and people are like, oh, I guess you can do that. Like they're disappointed. Like, it's the internet is weird.
It's some people like that genuinely don't understand. Like, okay, there's a difference between difficult and impossible. And for some people that like difference, they don't see it. If something is difficult, then you might as well not do it or not attempt it.
A lot of people don't understand the difference between something just taking some effort and some time, and then, oh, that's impossible. Well, no, I mean, that's not the same thing.
Yeah, well, kind of the best thing is like some people like with Rust, like the last Rust live stream I was having, I just had an issue getting the song. Like we had a practice like little song program to write that ran through the 12 days.
The free software song? Oh, okay.
Sadly,
Never mind.
no.
That would have been great.
Yeah, it was the 12 Nights of Christmas, running through it and adding the days and the like lyrics and everything.
Oh, that would have been great. Join us now and share.
I wish there were like days and stuff that I could make it, like have a function set up.
You
like
have to do that. You have to do it. As a matter of fact, you need to make a free software song application and make sure it becomes part of the GNU project. It needs to be a core util, make it a command line app.
With all of my comments talking about the GPL, I don't know that the Stallman would ever want to have anything to do with me. It's not like I hate on the GPL, but I also don't speak like I'm not the diehard person who's like the GPL should be the go-to license for everything.
What was funny is you asked about had the GPL actually been tested in court, and I mentioned there's been plenty of companies that have been sued over violating the GPL for various things, stealing GPL code and then not relicensing it, or just not making the source code public that they took. And one of those companies was VMware, famously, just a few years back, not too long ago. And VMware, I believe, is a platinum sponsor of the Linux kernel, which is also GPL software, by the way. Think about that. A platinum sponsor of the Linux kernel was sued for violating the GPL. But nobody really talks about that.
I love the intense irony there.
No. People are worried about Microsoft sitting on the board at the Linux Foundation and Facebook sitting on the board. They should be worried about freaking VMware more than those companies.
Well, to me, it will never get old. The fact that like a lot of people will argue online to their heart's content about how like it's terrible that these massive companies are behind Linux, but then also in the same breath will be like, well, Linux has come so far and we don't need all these companies. I'm like, why do you think it's come so far? Like,
it's a catch-22 because it's like, man, it's really great that Google is so invested in Linux. Well, Google makes so much proprietary hardware and software that depends on the Linux kernel. They're not doing it because they care about the community. Yeah, they're doing it because it makes them money.
Yeah,
it makes it right. So it's you can't really hate on them for it, but at the same time, you can't go give them a pat on the back, say good job, Google.
No, well, I mean, that's the thing with like most of these major corporations is the good stuff that they do. You can't pat them on the back for it. Like,
Microsoft's doing a lot with the Linux kernel for Azure.
Yeah.
Right. But what does that have to do with the Ubuntu user? Right. What does that have to do with,
like Google giving $400 million to Firefox or Mozilla. You like Firefox. They're not doing it because they care about Firefox and Mozilla existing. No. Well, they care about Mozilla existing, but because it keeps them out of legal loopholes. Like, right. That's it. That's the sad part about it. The only reason that Google in the browser space has a competitor is because they give them enough money to compete.
Well, they don't want to be in the situation that Microsoft was in with Internet Explorer and Netscape back in the day, where they had the antitrust lawsuit and were found to be a monopoly.
Yeah.
But that was a little different because Microsoft was actively trying to sabotage Netscape users. You couldn't really use it on Windows. You install it, but you could uninstall it. You can't uninstall Internet Explorer, though. And half the time, Internet Explorer is going to open up when you try to use Netscape anyway. You might as well just, So Google saw how that played out. And they don't want to be like that. But they could see they've kind of run Mozilla out of business.
Oh yeah.
We got to keep them around because we're going to end up just like Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No.
Well, I mean that's the sad part is Firefox to me I think would do a lot better if they focused on just Firefox and Thunderbird. Like the programs that people actually use, they probably do better, but they're not going to get the ways in which Mozilla tries to get money out of its users. Like, I'm sorry, you use a VPN, correct?
No.
Okay, so you don't use a VPN at all. All right. Well,
but if you're talking about Mozilla's rebranded, what is Private Internet Access VN or whatever the hell they're using on the back end,
that or something.
Is it? Yeah, it's not even their own VPN.
No.
They just,
it's worthless.
But that's where all of these browsers that are not Google Chrome are making a mistake. They're trying to be this big bloated thing, but the people that don't want to use Google Chrome are probably wanting the exact opposite of Google Chrome. They want something that's, in fact, not Google Chrome. So you can't keep making your browsers, just like Chrome. And that's where Mozilla has really come up short here in the last few years. It's where Vivaldi, it's a proprietary browser anyway, but Vivaldi's the same thing as trying to do way too much.
I don't know if you'd agree with this statement, but I feel like this is kind of a good statement. If you're going into business and you have a product that is solely good because it imitates your competitor, you're probably not going to do well. Like, because no matter what, like, let's say I came out tomorrow with this great Chinese phone that's fantastic. It looks just like an iPhone. It runs a knockoff version of iOS's it doesn't run real iOS, but you can emulate 80% of the iOS apps, and it looks very similar to iOS.
You could call the operating system Zaney for Zaney is not iOS.
There you go.
Use a recursive backronym.
Yep. Now, do you think I do well in the space? Like, do you think
probably not?
Exactly. No. Like, I wouldn't compete with Apple. Like,
it's all the first person there is always going to get the biggest piece of the pie.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. So
and it's really just like the thing with Firefox. Me and Matt have talked about this forever, but all Mozilla has to do is like cut the extraneous programs that they're working on, focus solely on Firefox, and innovate. And everyone would be down for it.
Now make it strictly a web browser. If you want to, I like the extensions, of course, of every browser, but maybe focus on that ecosystem where more people can contribute with plugins and extensions. That I think more time should be spent on that than useless things like VPN services and Pocket,
and also
the news service.
No one uses Pocket. Like,
there's no reason why.
The few people that do could use literally anything else. Like,
right.
There's 30 different versions of Pocket that do the same thing that aren't by Mozilla.
It's one of the things, and I know a lot of people don't like Brave, but it's been my default browser here for the last year or so. Is Brave? There's not much to it. It's just a browser. That's it. Right? It's just you get a browser.
And the things that they focus on make sense. Like,
they're going to focus on a new privacy-oriented search engine, and the Brave search is actually better than DuckDuckGo
by a long shot.
Which just blows my mind because DuckDuckGo makes so much money. Like, they've been around for a while, and companies support them. How the Brave guys don't have any money, but they're able to do something a lot better.
The thing is the Brave guys, I think they've tackled it in a much better way. Instead of just using Bing, they use Google and then try Google as their fallback. DuckDuckGo uses Bing.
Bing, yep.
Bing is so fucking terrible. Like, it's so bad.
Also, I think ultimately every project is going to either succeed or fall based on the person leading it. Brave obviously has Brendan Eich, the former founder of Mozilla, right? Former CEO of Mozilla, who created obviously Firefox, and he also created JavaScript, didn't he? Pretty sure he was one of the creators of the JavaScript language. Anyway, somebody that knows a lot about web browsers, he's running that company. So,
well, I mean, also the thing with the Mozilla guys is the executives get paid way too much.
Yes. Yes.
Way too
If you don't make any money, if there's no profits, yeah, you shouldn't be making
genuinely don't
anything.
understand. Like the crazy thing to me is outside of the Mozilla Corporation, every single person I talk to will objectively go, yes, they get paid way too much. Like, I don't even have to tell them how much they make, and they'll instantly go, yeah, they get paid too much.
Isn't it weird, though? You can always tell when the CEO of a company is not really doing their job. Like, you can always tell the companies that they need a change of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Mozilla has been one of those companies for a few years now, and I'm going to give you another one that's pretty obvious. YouTube.
Yeah.
Desperately needs a new CEO.
Yeah.
Can we get Elon Musk to run YouTube? He doesn't need to run Twitter. He needs to run YouTube. We need Elon here.
Elon running YouTube
would be epic.
Could you imagine?
You could donate to your favorite creator with Dogecoin directly in YouTube. And once a month, there's a drawing. Gives a free Tesla away to one of the creators. Instead of having a silver play button unboxing, you can have your Tesla unboxing.
I love the fact that just like no matter what, I don't see a world where Elon Musk starts running YouTube and it ends badly. Like I genuinely don't. I don't think that could happen.
Right. Well, he understands more about public perception and public image, things that content creators care about, for example, than your typical person. Well,
and he's also not the kind of guy to. He's not the one who wants to push the kind of shit that YouTube currently is trying to push. Like, YouTube is now in a weird spot where it feels like they want to censor stuff that they don't agree with heavily. Like,
well, it's more not necessarily that they want to censor stuff they don't agree with as far as them personally. It's more the fact that they're beholden to these corporations that spend billions of dollars with them buying ads on their network.
Well,
it's
even that, like the corporations that they're beholden to. When it comes to an ad network shouldn't be like we like these kinds of topics. If the topics are not these,
but the way we got here is. And we've had a couple of these adpocalypse situations on YouTube, is where all of a sudden some of their biggest advertisers didn't want anything to do with the platform and were threatening to pull all their ads because certain creators were on YouTube, or in some cases, certain topics in general are being talked about on YouTube. And that put Google and YouTube in an awkward situation. If it's a big company like, I don't know, Ford Motor Company, hey, some ridiculous tens of millions of dollars for an ad buy. And then they all of a sudden say, you know what? We were going to make this gigantic ad buy on your network, but we don't like this and that. It puts you in a tough position. What are you going to do? Well, we'll make some changes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, it is a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. You would think that at this point we would have some kind of fallback.
Well, it's the same situation with Facebook. It's for most people, they want to be where everybody else is already at. That's why Facebook has never had a serious competitor and will never have a serious competitor, is because human nature. I can't go to this other social media platform because all my friends are on Facebook.
No.
Same thing with YouTube. I don't want to go watch videos on this other platform because most of the stuff I watch is already on YouTube.
No. Well, I mean, I think the one saving grace for Facebook for humanity is the fact that if you're still on Facebook, like the only reason you're on Facebook is to catch up with your grandma. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, most stuff on Facebook can be transferred.
I don't even know what's going on Facebook these days. I signed up for a Facebook account. I resisted for many years when I started the YouTube channel. I felt like I needed to have some social media presence because I had zero. Mm-hmm. I don't like social media. So I signed up for a Twitter account and a Facebook account. And I kept that Facebook account for maybe 2 months,
Mhm.
and then got rid of it. And in that 2 months, doing the videos and everything, I had a few hundred, maybe a few thousand people following me on Facebook. But one day I just realized, this is not the place to be. Like, this is so not the place to be. Twitter especially. I got rid of both of them at the same time.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm not talking to these people. These are not human beings. I don't know what's going on this platform, Twitter especially. I was like, this is not the normal people I talk to in real life, right? And people don't realize how they're not the same on the internet, especially if you're not looking at somebody face to face. Like if you're just typing a quick message on Twitter, you can say all kinds of crazy stuff because it's not real. That person that's going to read that message, he's not real. He's just pixels on a screen.
Yep.
Well,
no, there's a person. It's like, I don't know. I can't go back to using Facebook. I never will. Like, me getting off of Facebook was probably one of the best things that ever happened.
Yeah, I've given up on the whole idea of me ever being active on social media ever, because I just can't do it. Like, I refuse to do it. I have a Mastodon account. Just to have a Mastodon account, I don't do much on it. I have an account on Reddit. Just to have an account on Reddit.
Yeah.
But I can't remember the last time I posted on Reddit.
I don't even.
I've got my own subreddit where I automatically post my videos, when they're uploaded. But as far as me actually posting a message or responding to anybody, it's got to be months. Matter of fact, I don't even know how many people are members of my subreddit. I know it gets activity because I get, notifications. Like, I've got this subreddit. It's got 2,500 members. I don't know what the hell goes on there. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't even.
I don't even have a Reddit account. I would never keep up with it. Like, I can't. I'll never be the super big social media guy. Like, no.
Yeah. The thing, the one difference with Reddit than Facebook and especially Twitter is people asking tech related questions, especially support kind of questions. Reddit is a much more appropriate place to have a conversation. Yeah. You can't tweet support, tech support to people, right? It's just not, you can't do that. I guess so not the right format. It's like YouTube comments are the same way. I tell people all the time, you're wasting your time. I see, especially new to Linux users, they see a video about Linux, they seem confused about things, or they just tried to do an install, it broke on them. I got this error message, and when do I, like, dude, go to a real support forum somewhere, like one of the various Linux support subreddits or Discord channels, IRC channels. You're wasting your time on YouTube because the comment system, the way it works, it's not even set up for that. Not to mention YouTube's algorithms. If they see some weird stuff,
they'll just delete the comments.
They just delete half the comments for no reason. Right?
Yep. Oh, dude, I've gotten so many emails from people so pissed off. They're like, I've tried to message you 3 times, fully explain my problem, and I think it's really distasteful that you would just delete my comment. I'm only trying to get help or point something out. And I'm like,
I don't even care about those angry people anymore. I get so many of them. Half the time, I don't even read my comments. Like when I post a video, I'll hang out for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, but I get too many comments, and then half of them are exactly that. Oh, yeah, I guess you didn't like my argument for why I disagreed with you on this video. You're a horrible person, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I could respond to him and let him know I ain't deleting nothing. Right? But
that person also doesn't believe.
But I don't care. I was like, let him be mad.
I mean, well, even if you had a back and forth with him, like that's why I've stopped having.
I don't care
with those.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with anybody on the internet.
Yeah. Well, that's also how it will always devolve. It always turns into an argument about you deleting comments. And it's like, I'm not going to convince you that I didn't delete your comment, and this argument doesn't matter. Like.
Right. It's like, whatever.
If you believe that I genuinely go through my comments and I find one comment where I'm like, I don't know that I necessarily agree with this.
What I find funny is the way it's worded sometimes is, I can't believe you deleted my comment because I disagreed with this or that, or my comment wasn't even that bad. Well, if you think about what you just wrote, your comment really wasn't that bad. Maybe I didn't delete it. Like you say you can't believe it. Well, maybe you shouldn't believe it.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, all right, man. I think I've held up your time for long
right.
enough, and I'm sure that food that my sister tried to bring in here is sitting out there waiting on me. So I'll let you get back to. I'm assuming you're just going to dive straight back into GTK.
No, it's coming up on the end of my day here, so I'm going to call it the end of a work day, and I'm going to head home.
All right.
If I hurry up, I might beat rush hour traffic. We'll see.
Well, all right. Then we'll quickly wrap up so you can make it home in a decent time. Thanks, everybody, for watching this. I hope all you guys have a great one. DT's links, which hopefully to God, if you're watching my channel, you've seen his channel. Check out below. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next one. Boy.
Peace.